I'm Otis Gyrie, and where I'm from, we don't do nice bedtime stories. Here on Scary Stories Told in the Dark, we bring you immersive original tales about malicious monsters, deadly deals with demons, and the gruesomely grotesque. With short stories from published horror authors to accomplished indie creepypasta authors, which are brought to life through our eerily haunting sound design and narration from yours truly, you're guaranteed to hear the tales that make your skin crawl and your palms sweat. So dive into the cosmically creepy with us by subscribing to Scary Stories Told in the Dark on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
The hooded man said something that made my whole body go cold. It's okay. You can tell me where you really live.
I bolted upright and said out loud in the firmest voice I could muster, "Leave me alone."
Our laughter was interrupted by flashing white lights deep in the forest and the sounds of shoes smacking dirt. Never coming for us.
From Killer Podcasts, true tales of horror, bizarre happenings, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed. Hello, and welcome back to the show. This week, we have 4 creepy experiences that will keep you looking over your shoulder. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror. In our first story, a hooded stranger approaches 2 boys. Narrated by Bodhi Crowe from Reddit user Six Paths Kyle.
Do you have any of those stories from when you were little that you look back on and just shudder? This is mine, and until my brother and I were talking the other day, I completely forgot about it. It went down when I was in 3rd grade. Back then, me and my family lived in a not great part of a shitty city. Some people would call our neighborhood a ghetto. I know I did. Not that that bothered me. I was 8. Whenever the sun was out and I wasn't in school, I'd be playing on the streets just like every other kid in the neighborhood. I swear I made friends with just about all the kids around my age who lived nearby. One of them lived catty-corner to my family and down a couple of houses. I liked going over to his place whenever I could because his bedroom was in the attic, which I thought was fucking sick. Plus, he had a mini pool table. He was a couple years older than me, and we'd met when he was going door to door, asking people if they'd pay him to mow their lawns. We'd got to chatting about ways of getting extra money and started hanging out after that. Anyways, one afternoon I went over to his house after school. We were playing pool and watching TV for a few hours until his parents told me that it was getting late and I should head home. Now, by this stage, it was fully dark outside. But this was my neighborhood, so I wasn't scared. And it's not like it was a long way back to my house, just across the street and up a few houses. Still, my buddy said he'd walk me home. As we stepped off his front porch and the front door banged shut behind us, the street felt so quiet. Looking back, it was definitely eerie how empty it was. But I was a kid. I wasn't paying attention to stuff like that. Me and my friend are just talking about some video game we wanted to play as we crossed the road. That's when we saw him, the man in dark clothing. I don't remember much about his face, and to be honest, that's probably the way he wanted it. He was wearing a black hoodie with the hood pulled right up over his head, so his features were mostly in shadow. He'd stepped off the sidewalk and was walking straight at us. He met us in the middle of the street, planting himself directly in front of us, so we had to stop. He was a grown-up. It's not like we could just ignore him. Peering out at us from this hood, he asked us what our names were. Hearing him speak, and especially him asking that question, gave me the creeps. I felt the shiver run through my whole body. I did not want to talk to this guy. But before I could do anything, my friend just offered up his name. Then, when I didn't say anything, he told him my name too. The man didn't tell us anything about himself, so now he knew our names, which felt weird to me. But I didn't think I could just leave. Remember, I was younger than my buddy, so at this point, I kind of started taking my cue from him. If he thought it was okay to answer this strange man's questions, then maybe it was. He asked us what we liked to do for fun, and we told him we liked playing pool on his family's mini pool table. The man didn't seem all that interested in hearing us talk about pool, though. Instead, he leaned closer to us and asked where we lived. That's when I got really scared. I knew I wasn't supposed to be talking to strangers. I'd known it for years, and hearing that question really drove it home to me. This man was a stranger. If he didn't know these things about me, then I should not be talking to him, and I definitely shouldn't give him my address. But as I was looking around, hoping someone would show up and just save me from this situation, I heard my friend start speaking again. He said, "I live right there," and he turned to point right at his house. I was shocked. I guess my friend hadn't been taught the same stranger danger lessons as me. Or he thought he was too old to pay attention to stuff like that. And it wasn't just his own safety he was messing with. As I stood there, too stunned to do anything, the man turned his gaze on me and asked where I lived. I screwed up my face and jabbed my finger at a home up the street. "I live up there," I said. My friend, who by now I realized must be the dumbest kid on the block, then turned to me and said, "What? Dude, that's not where you live. You live right there." And he literally points right at my fucking house. Now, there were two things running through my head at this point. The first was that I couldn't believe how idiotic my buddy was. How could he not understand that I was lying to this man for a reason? The second thing was sheer panic. This creepy-ass stranger now knew my name and which house was mine. I immediately did the only thing I could think of. I argued. I yelled at my friend, "No, that's not where I live. Are you stupid? You wouldn't know where I live because you've never been to my house. I live right there." I pointed in the direction of the other house I'd chosen earlier. I was so desperate for the man to believe me instead of my friend. That's when the hooded man said something that made my whole body go cold. In a quiet voice, he said, "Come on, Kyle. It's okay. You can tell me where you really live." But I wasn't falling for it. I stubbornly held my arm up towards the random house and insisted, "That's where I live, I swear." Then I point at my traitorous friend. "He's never been to my house before." The man grinned and asked, "Are you sure?" I was having a full-blown meltdown by now, but because I was 8, I didn't realize just how bad things really were. In my head, there was only one thing this man could want, and I knew it was my job to scare him off. I raised my voice and told him that, yes, I was sure. Then I said, "If you try to rob my house, my dad will shoot you because we have guns. He'll kill you." Robbery. I, a 3rd grader, was scared that this man was a burglar. In my head, there was nothing else he could possibly want with us. I was practically vibrating with fear and anger, and exhilarated by the lies I was telling to this grown man. My dad didn't live with us, by the way, but I was sure that would scare this guy off. And it seemed to work. Either that or my yelling. Whatever it was, the man seemed kinda spooked, or maybe just annoyed. Looking around the empty street, he said he had to go. I waited for him to walk away and vanish into the night before I would move. Once I was sure he was gone, I started running towards my house, feeling tears sting my eyes. I could hear my friend's footsteps right behind me. As I got to the porch, I yanked open the front door, turned to my buddy, and called him stupid. Then I slammed the door in his face and ran to find my mom. I told her that there was a man in a black hoodie who was going to try and rob our house because my idiot friend had told him where we lived. Looking back, I don't know whether she believed me or not, but she gave me a hug and made me feel a bit better about the whole situation. Still, I was convinced that I hadn't seen the last of this man, that he'd be back to rob our house very soon. I actually had a hard time falling asleep the next few nights because I kept imagining I could hear the sound of someone breaking a window or picking the lock on the front door. I didn't stop talking about him for days, at the dinner table, on the school bus, whenever my brother wanted to play outside. I stopped hanging out with my friend after that night. I think I probably hurt his feelings when I yelled at him and called him stupid. I know that would have made me feel awful if someone had said that to me at that age. But I was so upset that he had told that creepy man my name and where I lived. It didn't matter for much longer, though. About a month or so later, me and my family moved out of that house and into a different neighborhood. A little while later, though, my mom came to visit me in my bedroom one night. She told me that my buddy, the one with the pool table, had gone missing. His parents figured he'd run away from home. That made total sense to me at the time. In my head, kids running away was something that happened all the time. It was no big deal. For decades, it was no big deal. I didn't even think about it. But a few days ago, my brother brought up the story of the man in the hoodie, talking about how scared I was. It got me thinking about my friend, who wasn't scared of strangers, who gave his name and his address out like he was sharing candy with a friend. Suddenly, I wondered if he really ran away, or if he was taken. All those nights I spent fearing the sound of a jiggling door handle or of smashing glass. But maybe it wasn't me who should have been scared. What if it was him in his attic bedroom who needed to be afraid? I can't stop myself from picturing it. All the ways it might have happened. Snatched off the street and pulled into a car. Lured away from the schoolyard. Or, maybe just straight up abducted from his bed in the middle of the night. I know I'm probably just overthinking this. I have no idea if they ever found the kid after he disappeared, and I can't remember his name to look him up. So now, I'll always wonder.
Welcome back to Disturbed. On New Year's Day, a young woman looks to take a car home, but the driver has other plans. Narrated by Robyn Unger from Reddit user oddmeringue1234.
New Year's Eve, 2023, Paris. I was 24 and the party was in full swing. A few of my girlfriends and I, all from a suburb north of the city, had decided to go to this club that was known for their parties that went until morning. We had fun dancing, laughing, and drinking. At midnight, we celebrated the new year, 2024, but that was only the beginning of the night. With the help of some drugs, we stayed until morning. At around 7 a.m., I finally tapped out, so I told my friend I was going to head home. She told me she was going to leave soon too, and we could share a ride home if I waited. 25 minutes went by, and she still wasn't ready to go. So I decided to order my own ride. I used this app, Bolt, which is just like Uber, but cheaper. My ride arrived 5 minutes later, so I said my goodbyes and headed downstairs to the front entrance. I was joined by a friend of mine who wanted to make sure I got in the car safely. As I stepped into the cold, I saw the car right in front of me. It was a regular black car, but something was off about it that I couldn't quite place. I told myself I was just being paranoid. It was the substances talking. I just needed to get home and rest. I opened the door and sat in the back seat. Immediately, the feeling in my chest got stronger. Before I could figure out why, the driver started asking me questions. Is that your friend? Is that your boyfriend? Who is he? Why is he looking at me like that? My friend was just outside the car, waiting for us to drive off. I had no idea why the driver was being so defensive. Annoyed, I said he was my friend, that he has every right to be there, and that it's none of his business. We headed off towards home, and the driver wasted no time asking uncomfortable questions like if I had a good night, if I drank a lot, and a whole bunch of things about my love life. That made the feeling in my chest grow even more, to the point where I couldn't ignore it. I felt like if I stayed in his car, something awful would happen. Sure enough, he started driving faster, uncomfortably fast. My body began to violently sway as he made a series of turns, with the GPS loudly chirping in the background. At the same time, the car was getting hot, really hot. I tried rolling down the window, but it was locked, and the driver refused to lower it. You need to lower the window, I said. Turning down the heat is not enough, and I'm getting really uncomfortable. We argued a bit more back and forth before he finally agreed to lower it. See? I'm nice, he said. I let you open the window. Then, amidst all the chaos in the car, something the GPS said stuck out. In 100 meters, make a U-turn. Why would we need to turn around? I looked out the window and my blood ran cold. We were going completely in the wrong direction. Not toward my house at all. He was totally ignoring the GPS. My heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I was trapped. But I refused to let the panic fully consume me. I knew I just had to keep my cool and wait for the next red light. A minute later, I got my wish. A traffic light ahead turned yellow and my driver pressed on the brakes. The light turned red and we abruptly stopped. Hey, sorry, but why aren't we going the right way? He turned toward me and stared straight into my eyes. Slowly, he looked me up and down and up, and said the sentence that completely froze me, and that still terrifies me today. But the right way to where? I didn't wait a second. I shoved the door open and frantically ran down the street. Over my shoulder, I saw him standing outside the car, screaming at the top of his lungs. Come back. Why are you leaving? I kept running as fast as I could while he got back in his car. The engine started with a growl and his tires screeched so loudly it made me stumble before I turned down an alley. I didn't dare look back, but I didn't see his car after that. I went a few more blocks till I felt safe and called a friend. They thought I was just high and paranoid and didn't know what I was talking about, even though I had just been through hell. Eventually, they came to understand how traumatic it all was, but it was so frustrating to be dismissed at first. I tried to file a complaint to the cops, but the police didn't really follow up on what I said in my pre-complaint. They told me they couldn't do anything and that I should contact Bolt. Bolt told me the exact same thing. that I needed to contact the police. So I gave up. It clearly wasn't going anywhere, especially because I didn't know if his license plate matched the one that the app gave me. I just didn't check before I got in the car. I will never make that mistake again. I often wonder what would have happened to me if I hadn't been able to open that door. Thank God I insisted on opening that window. I'm convinced that before that, the door was locked too, and if I hadn't insisted, I wouldn't have been able to get out. No one knows what would have happened to me, because that man clearly had no intention of taking me home. The whole thing really damaged me. I've had difficulty leaving home, communicating, and overall, I've become so hateful of how evil people can be. I haven't been in another Bolt or Uber since. And this wasn't even the worst let's not meet experience I've had. Something about me just attracts the worst people. And I don't know how I'm supposed to live with that.
Next, a group of friends adventure into an abandoned wood, where they find something that was supposed to stay hidden. Narrated by Dustin Melvin, from Reddit user TangerineAble7479.
When I was in college, a few of my high school friends loved hanging out on the weekends. It was usually me and 3 others, who I'll call D, L, and K. We would often sit in the woods, buy alcohol, have a few drinks. One Saturday in July, we decided to head out to the forest a few miles away. It was daylight and we planned to explore as much of it as possible before it got dark. The forest was really dense in most places, and a lot of the daylight would be shrouded in shadow, even when the sun was at its highest. But it was calm. Peaceful. The forest was located behind a prison, which added some fear, but seeing as it was daylight, we didn't think about it much. We stepped into the forest and pushed our way through these dense trees for about 45 minutes. We were chatting away, catching up. Then, we saw something through the trees in the near distance, and when we reached it, we noticed it was a fully built small cabin. It was a hexagonal shape with thick log walls and sticks of mud for a roof. We noticed a huge deep fire pit next to the cabin, and trash everywhere. It looked as though it was recently used. We shared thoughts about who could have built it, and even suggested an escaped prisoner had wandered into the forest after escaping. Looking back on it now, an escaped prisoner wouldn't hide in the forest behind the prison to build a cabin. We were young and, I guess, excited about the mystery. The cabin didn't have a door, so we knew there wasn't anything inside. We did head inside, though, to see what we could see. And when we stepped in, we noticed a bunch of tools hanging on the walls. Rusty saws, hammers, screwdrivers, that kind of thing. We were a bit freaked out and debated leaving before whoever built it returned. But somehow we ended up deciding to take the tools and build our own cabin deeper in the forest. You can probably imagine how that went. After just a few hours and a couple of logs, we got bored. We decided to call it a day and head back home, but we left the tools where we had started building our cabin and neglected to return them. Fast forward a week, we decided to head back to the forest and find the cabin to see if anything had changed. Before we set out, we bought a load of hairspray and marshmallows from the store, so we could build a fire in the fire pit we found. We entered the woods as the sun set and pushed our way through the brush once again. Upon reaching the cabin, we discovered it had been completely destroyed. Logs were split and tossed in every direction, like someone had hacked it down in a fit of rage. We passed around a few theories, but the leading one was that the owner knew someone had been there and decided to tear it down. That worried us a bit. The plan was to roast marshmallows, but was there someone here with us? Someone that wanted us gone? We decided to move to a different site and continue with the plan, hoping the forest would conceal us as much as possible. We walked for around 30 minutes to a new spot. dug a pit, lit our fire. For a while, we had a great time. We had a few drinks, roasted marshmallows. My friend Elle played a few songs on his guitar. After an hour or so, our laughter was interrupted by flashing white lights deep in the forest, followed shortly after by shouting and the sounds of shoes smacking dirt, never coming for us. We frantically tried to come up with a plan. We knew the forest would be too hard to navigate in the dark, especially to the south where it became even thicker and we'd be cornered. Me and Dee really wanted to run, but Elle and Kay thought they'd be caught anyway, and we're gonna try to hide or reason with them. Panicking and running out of time, Dee and I make a break for it. We didn't want to head to either side of the men because they would cut us off, so the only option was south, into deeper, thicker forest. Using our flashlight only when necessary, we rushed through this thick, dark forest, every step battered by foliage, leaving us scraped and scratched all over. After a grueling 20 minutes, we come to this barbed wire farmer's fence. We looked back and couldn't see anything, but we could hear the men in the distance. We knew we didn't have long, and this fence went on and on. We decided we had to climb and hope the men wouldn't follow. So we did. I managed to take my hoodie from around my waist and cover some of the barbed wire. But as we made the leap over, it caught the top of my forearm and some of Dee's leg. Instead of continuing south, we decided to travel along the fence until we found a way back through and around the men. We had no idea what was happening to Elle and Kay, and we debated calling the police when we were able to. But we weren't meant to be lighting fires and didn't want to get in trouble, so we moved in silence. The sound of my heart beating through my chest was enough to drown out every sound around us, but I kept as calm as I could. After a while, we came across a section we could hop over safely and into a less dense part of the forest. We had no signal on our phones and couldn't call Elle or Kay, so we continued on and soon enough found an exit to the forest. We couldn't hear anything behind us, and we could see some traces of civilization, houses in the distance. We headed in that direction, thinking it would be safer. And to our relief, we found Kay and Elle underneath a street lamp a few blocks away. They decided to hide because Elle had his guitar and couldn't effectively run with it. And apparently it worked. The men arrived at the fire just as Kay and Elle hid behind some logs, just outside of the light of the fire. They said the men looked a lot older than us and held crowbars and were really aggressive. As the men were shouting for us, Elle and Kay managed to make their escape. On their way out, they caught a glimpse of a pickup truck parked on a logging trail, its headlights on, but no one inside. Safe to say it was probably their truck. We tried figuring out what they wanted. Had we stumbled into something we weren't supposed to? Were they trying to protect it? We went back to the forest a few times searching for answers, but never ventured as deep and only during the day. But we never really found any answers.
Disturbed will return in a moment. In our final story, something supernatural lurks in the shadows of a child's bedroom. Narrated by Tasmin Singh, from Reddit user NoSet2334.
Back when I was 17, I was living with my dad and my stepmom. But it wasn't just the three of us. I'm pretty sure there was something else living with us, too. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I never experienced anything strange or unusually creepy in that house before this night, so it's not like I was expecting this or looking for it even. But once was more than enough to have me convinced. The night it happened, I was up late. Later than my dad and stepmom, at least. By the time I was getting ready for bed, I could already hear them snoring from the next room over. I brushed my teeth, checked the front door was locked, and turned out all the lights as I walked back down the hall. I got to my bedroom, which was full of all the usual teenage stuff. Posters on the wall, homework on the messy desk, and some clothes on the floor. My bed was against the wall. On one side of me was the door, the other had a window. Standard room. So anyway, I crashed onto my bed and flipped onto my stomach, which is how I've always slept. I lay there, listening to the familiar snores coming from the next room, waiting for sleep to come. But it didn't. Usually I would pass out pretty quickly, so this already felt unusual. But then I realized I wasn't sleeping because I wasn't relaxed. I had this heavy, uncomfortable sensation, like someone was staring at me. But that was ridiculous. I could still hear my dad and stepmom snoring, and there was no one else in the house. Still, the feeling wouldn't go away. Something was watching me. I just knew it. So, slowly, I lifted my head to look around. There was enough light coming in through the window so I could see pretty well, but there wasn't anything out of place. So I nestled back into my pillow and tried to forget it. But I couldn't shake that awful feeling. In fact, it started to get stronger. Eventually, I couldn't stand it anymore. I lifted my head up again and really took my time scanning the room, peering into the corners. That's when I saw it. In the corner by the door, there was a shadow. No, that's not right. It was more like a full silhouette, a person. It was standing just a few feet from where I was lying. I couldn't move. I just stared at it, frozen for what felt like minutes. I was so freaked out, and I didn't know what to do. But it didn't seem to be moving. So, for some reason, I told myself that the best option was just to ignore it. Pretend it wasn't there. Maybe this was just my tired brain creating something out of nothing. All I needed was to get to sleep. So I laid back down and forced my eyes closed, still feeling my heart beating a tattoo inside my chest. Even as I tried to calm myself down, I felt this thing move. It wasn't making any sound, but I knew it was coming closer. The same way I knew it had been watching me. Turning my head, I opened my eyes, and sure enough, it was moving slowly, walking towards the foot of the bed. My heart dropped. Ignoring it hadn't worked. Or maybe I hadn't ignored it completely enough. So I turned my head to face the other side of the room, hoping it would just disappear. Then I felt it. The mattress gently depressed at my feet. It was sitting on my bed. I knew then that this couldn't be my mind playing tricks on me. This was too real to be my imagination. I felt a cold pressure slide up my legs as if something was climbing towards me. Then, warm breath on the back of my neck. It was so close. I bolted upright and said out loud in the firmest voice I could muster, "Leave me alone. You are not welcome here. I am trying to sleep." Immediately, the room felt lighter. The pressure I'd been feeling lifted and I could catch my breath. After a few seconds, I laid back down and fell asleep almost right away. It was like whatever that thing was, it was just gone. I was grateful, and luckily, I never felt anything like that in the room again. But it stuck with me for years, and I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I didn't tell it to go away.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producer is Declan Roars. Audio engineering by Nathan Corson, Will Pritz, and Sean Rule Hoffman. Executive producer Bridget Coyne. Until next time, stay safe out there.